EGLE Bulk Shipping, EGLE. When you look at the last year, they've been on an upward trend. They're at that line where I would expect them to kind of stay above the $45 mark. With EGLE, they're definitely one that has the potential to have a lot of gains by 2025, 2030. And I'll go through some reasons why. One of those being this graph here, going back to 2015, shows where they were around $2,000. Now, I would think by like 2025, they would increase maybe to about 500. But with them being in shipping is definitely going to be a major resource coming up with dry bulk goods, especially with the vaccines, food supply. You look at electronics, all the stuff that needs to be shipped around the world. They're definitely going to be one of those stocks that can yield you some growth in the future. With EGLE, this is going back to show around 2007. They were up over $250,000. To think that they could get back to that price, you're looking past 2035 on a long play. They have to reverse this chart, and by 2030 you could be looking at $10,000 to $20,000. And that's going back to 2013 to say where they were if they reverse their chart, being at 2021. By 2030 they might possibly have a chance to be back up there. Moreover, EGLE is currently trading at 81% of its 52-week high. So if you look at the high-low range, hinting that it can be on average, it could be on the verge of a breakout anytime soon. So with them, they've been on a trend this last week to go on an incline after they went through a little valley. So that's what's making me post this video, is when you go back prior to 2017 and you're looking at pre-pandemic, the big valley there. And if you take and go back to 2017 and look at where their lowest marks were, around $35, they've went above that line, and they've crossed that $45 line, where they're showing indications that they could veer off and go on another major steep incline. And I would say that they could probably head to $75 real easy. If you look at all the dips going across, and then you just look at where I drew the blue line up and down at 2020, and you back up, you can take a good look that they kept an average of above $35. When you look at where the $45 mark is, their dip then, pre-pandemic wise, they've went through all the resistance and they've came back through to be back above the pre-pandemic level and keep rising. So if you went back to 2018, 2019, when they were coming through, they're showing a strong gain, where looking at where they were when the pandemic hit, they went down to $11.13. After being at $11.13, they've been able to rise back up and rebound past all the threshold levels they needed to. But if you look at most, I think if you invested right now, maybe you could see a dip back down to that 45 level, but they're not going to break below that 45. And I wouldn't expect them to. I'd expect them to maybe incline to $65 to $75, maybe drop back down to $50, $55, where it's at right now. But by the end of, and that's going through September and October, but by the time you get to November, December, you get to toys, Christmas time, stateside, you could have an easy $100 stock, possibly, if shipping continues the way it's going, and goods, and you look at inflation, and the shipping market needs to, if they adjust prices and prices go up, that comes back to the consumers. So they kind of were, as the people were kind of the consumers, were at the mercy of, if the shipping ups their prices, that's going to be reflected in the prices of goods and the cost, which the more they control and up their prices, the more we're going to see that. With this graph, this takes you back to September of 2019. If you don't know about shadow bank, I would do some research. And if you check in and look up shadow bank, there's a lot to learn about what happened in September of 2019, which can, overall, when you start looking at graphs, it can help you out. I would set a target on a long play for them for 5 years. And looking at 2025, I could easily see this company going to $500 a share, which would be a 10 times play on a long play. And in 2015, that's when they were at $462 in December 21st, 2015. Going back farther, you can see how far it rises up to $20,000 in 2013. So you can probably say by 2025, 2026, they can easily get back to 500 to 1,000 and then continue to upward trend. You could possibly see some long-term good gains with them, up to 200 times plus. If you hold them 2020, I would say that if you hold them to 2030, you're going to be on the safe side to look at a solid 8 years. Going from 2013 to 2021 being 8 years. If you looked at, we're almost at 2022, by 2030, I would expect them to be back to giving you a 200 times profit possible. The future of the shipping industry is likely to continue to include cargo containers, but it will also likely include emphasis on digitalization to improve efficiency in trade routes and ambitious goals to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Ocean shipping is by far the most efficient way of transporting goods. I have the websites on some of the bottoms for these statistics and different websites I use to get the information. If you want, pause the video, write the website down, and then go read the articles and read more about the information. That's why I have it posted the way I'm doing this. Between 2019 and 2027, the global container shipping market is forecasted to grow a compound annual growth rate of over 4%. While the market was sized at $8.7 billion US dollars in 2019, it is expected to surpass the value of $12 billion US dollars in 2027. That's a recent article from 2021. A new report commissioned by Marine and the Maritime in the UK, and looking at this article, if you go to this website, it can show you they're expecting a lot more. This was another article where we ship food, technology, medicines, and memories. As the world population continues to grow, particularly in developing countries, low cost and efficient maritime transport has an essential role to play in growth and sustainable development. Maritime transport is the backbone of global trade and the global economy. When you look at this is the 3 pillars: economic, social, and environmental. And once again, I urge everybody to pause the video on these, write down the websites, and go read further into them. I'm just briefly touching on the topics so that way you can kind of get a handle on it. With the 3 P's of sustainability, you're looking at the people, the planet, and the profits. So here we're looking at economic, social, and environmental. Here we're looking at the people, the planet, and the profits. And it's definitely, you can see Elon Musk, he's sending his rockets up and they're catching them and retrieving them out in the waterways. You can see the waterways are definitely becoming a major importance in just about anything that you're doing. So it's that trickle down economics, the whatever's happening out there, it's going to come back to us. The more we're putting into space, and now we're trying to put goods into space. That means we're putting goods not only on Earth, but we're putting goods into space. There's fewer goods to go around than on Earth. So that will also increase the demand influx, which comes to that sustainability. So when we look at the future generations to meet their needs, we definitely have to look at what we're doing with our economic, environmental, and social. With the container shipping, look at a lot of statistics and stuff, but it all comes back to that 80% of all the goods are carried by sea. This is something to show with zero emissions and with the EV technology, that if we go to a hydrogen-based fuel system and you go into using more electricity on ships, they alter the hull shape using wind-assisted propulsion and solar energy to change the way the cargo space is, fuel bunkering, so that way they're doing one shot shipping, so that way long distance voyages, they're not stopping at so many ports. Go to safety4seas.com, check that out. If you have time, go to time.com. It will show the surge in shipping costs globally could cause price hikes from coffee to toys, which brought me into sugar prices to touch on. With sugar prices, you can look at it. I would expect sugar to keep rising till 2022. If you have time, check out Good Returns. This will give you a few of theirs. Things in the US like Hershey's, you can see they're on an upward climb with sugar. Their stock's been rising. OTC market, AHFD, they've been rising through the last year to 2 years. The last 2 years, you've seen LVVV rise. They're on OTC. Look at PARF. They've been on a rise. Another one was Rocky Mountain Chocolate Factory, RMCF. They've been on a rise. So sugar is rising. And as we go through and look at some of these sugar stocks, it will definitely come back. And we look at all the stuff that we're going through. So it's that 80% of all goods are carried by the sea. There's no way we can really get around that. So this was the article I want to go back to with where it said 57 billion. So in this article it says, making it larger than many other comparable transportation industries, including rail and aerospace. Looking at some of the articles that I've read in, it doesn't matter how we want to try to transport any of our goods, the waterways and the seas are definitely becoming one of the main ways that we transport anything throughout. So if we look at this, that everything is supporting trade routes and ambitious goals to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Ocean shipping by far the most efficient way of transporting. I want to go back and talk about the people, the planet, and the profits. So this also comes into with the technology that we have and the technology going on ships. A lot more ships are going to be able to go through areas and doing the long transfer hauls. You have 5G technology hitting a lot of these ships. So when it comes to that frameworks and sustainability, they're going to create these ships so that way they can even be unmanned. Some of them, they're going to be on limited crews. So with them being able to minimize how many people are on the ship, and they're going to be minimizing their cost, but maybe in that it might become a longer transfer time for ships to get place to place. When it comes to the people, the planet, and the profits, when the ships do come into harbor, you're going to see a major influx inside everything. I would say wherever everything's at. Now, if you take and look at 5 years out, and you look at a 10% inflation rate, or if you take 15 years out and you look at 2% a year, in a 30% inflation rate, just in inflation alone, and if something happens to the dollar, and you look at cryptocurrencies, and you look at all the different ways to pay, that some of these companies, they're definitely going to be in that economic, environmental, and social. So looking at how the future generations are going to pay for stuff and the sustainability of those goods is going to be a new era and wave coming in between 2021 and 2045. If they're going to put stuff on ships, then that's where it goes back to some of my videos about fuel cell and plug. So it's the fuel cell technology, the green hydrogen, which taps into the oxygen. So they're able to use the water and maybe produce something on the ships, and they're doing more stuff and putting a different speed and powering into it. But at the same time, we have to produce these solar panels, and they're going to do wind assisted propulsion. So with all the hurricanes and the storms, how is that going to affect shipping? With the cargo space, that's one of the things that if say the weather's getting worse, maybe it's more of an internal cargo system. It's hard to say what these ships are going to look like and what they're thinking about coming out with. But with the vessel hull design, this kind of shows 3 different types. And it is like the capacity, the speed, and the powering. When you're looking at efficiency and safety, the engineering process. So shipbuilding will probably be one of those jobs that increase. You're definitely going to need people to help create these ships. With the coffee and the toys, that's why I put up this stuff with the sugar. Once again, if I think like Hershey's, this one is OTC, and with this I want to come back and touch on it because it's also looking at the diabetics, things with people on insulin. Like, the sugar is going to be a key part of all kinds of stuff in the future. It's going to affect the market as a global restaurant, all the stuff that gets produced coming into foods, and you're going to see that trickle down effect. So I think some of these right now, if you can get in on them while they're early, you have definitely a good chance. Once again, this is just to promote due diligence, to lead people to do more research for themselves, to try to invest in themselves, to come up with more ways to invest in what you use on an everyday, what you could see things going out of. But in the EV market, if they're transporting minerals and they need this and they need that, the way you're going to get everything to a factory is going to be from ships going from one side to another. So I think in America, we definitely need to do more research on what we're actually going through. So once again, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not a stockbroker. I'm just a blue-collar worker that I pay close attention to what's going on for my kids and their growth, job availability, things with college, what is worth going to college for, what's going to be a job in the future, what are the things that we're going to be in high demand in our area for, what things aren't grown in our area, what things do we have shipped into our area. I think these are all things that people should be really looking at if they're trying to switch us to EV technology, but then we can't get the chips for the cars, but the cars are built. How many cars are really on the road? If they're limited, how much is going up? All these things come into play. It comes back to trucking, gas. They want us to go away from fossil fuels, and if we're going green, then there's less fossil fuels, so you'd expect the fossil fuel prices to rise too with oil, natural gas. As we reach another pandemic height and pandemic numbers keep rising, the amount of water, so with oxygen, water prices are going up. You look at the Hoover Dam, different places that are going out. If they start shutting farms down and all the farms can't get the water that they need to grow the crops, less crops will be produced in America. The water sources we do have, they're also using the water because we have to come up with oxygen through this pandemic. So water is even a bigger, scarce source because